Hi guys, it's Blackie. Okay, today I want to answer a question that I had for a long time, and quite a few people have, since they saw me in a video, asked me about it. So, the question is, between the Bahco Laplander and the SILKYSAW, which one is better? Okay, let's define what we're talking about here. Both of these are good quality saws. Both of these perform very well in the field. And both of these are about the right size, in my opinion, for putting into a haversack or a pack or carrying on a belt. They're not too big or too small. The advantage, of course, you're going to get with Silkies is you can get them big old huge things. On the other hand, you can get an even smaller version of this. They've got quite a few models depending on your application, from the little small one of the pocket boy all the way up to that huge katana like thing, which if you don't have a chainsaw and you got to cut green wood would be an excellent saw. The Bahco, on the other hand, has got a thicker blade, but we'll get to that. Let's look at each one of these point by point, and then we'll see which one, Now, let's start with the Bahco. I've had this one for probably 2 years. Before this, I had been utilizing a saw that was made by Fiskars, and just a simple pruning saw. And let's be straight up, these are both pruning saws, is what they are. This is a Japanese pruning saw, and this is one made out of, I think, Scandinavia somewhere, Europe, something like that. And that's what their primary function is for pruning around gardens and stuff like that, something quick. Hunters use these as well. And they're very useful for that. They're light, they're quick, whereas a big bow saw is more efficient for sawing up firewood and making lumber, so to speak. This is just a quick and handy way to pull something out, make something, trim something, shelter building, etc. The saw, to me, is the more efficient way to build a shelter because it's less effort. I can saw, flip the other side saw, snap it off, and in less than a minute take something like 3 inches diameter and snap it off. Yes, I can chop that down with my kukri very easily and very quickly, and I've done that in many videos. But the amount of labor, burn calories so to speak, is just much more efficient, and I can outpace somebody using a hatchet or whatever with one of these small saws just by a saw, snap, saw, snap, saw, snap. And it's easier to get things to a given length with the saw than it is with a chopping device. But back to the Bahco and me have been together like 2 years. I've had nothing but praise for this. It was a real eye-opener when I got it because the Fiskars did a good job, but the Bahco did much better. Now let's get a little closer up here. Talk about the features a second. Now the Bahco has a lanyard hole, and that's important to me because, one, it gives me a loop, so if I'm working up that if I dropped it, it's gone, I've got a way to anchor it. It's also a handy way to secure it onto other pieces of gear. I can soft shackle or carabiner this to a belt or a pack or whatever. It just makes it handy. If it doesn't have a loop in it of some kind, it makes it more awkward in camp. It's got a locking, it locks closed, and it's got a button right here that you press to open and bring it up. As you can see, this one has been used but not abused. Okay. Teeth on this one are fine cut for cutting on hardwood. Okay, and wood that's been dry. You'll see you can get blades with bigger, coarser teeth for use on green wood, and that's the primary difference between these two saws I'm talking about. But I've used this quite extensively. The blade tapers down and it's nice and narrow, and it's fairly thick for a saw blade. It's also true spring steel. As you can see, I can flex it and it comes back to true. A lot of the cheaper saws are just a hardened piece of steel. What it means is when it bends, it stays bent. And so true spring steel springs back to its original configuration. And the Bahco does that good. Now, the Bahco will cut on the forward stroke and the back stroke. So it's speed and efficiency that way, okay? It locks good in position, but you only have one locking position, and that's wide open. Then you have the press, lock, and closed. The silky saw that I chose is the Gumboy. Whoops. As you saw in an earlier video, it has a lanyard hold as well. And I came up with a little lock, and I did this in an earlier video to be able to lock it because the Gumboy does not lock closed. However, as many of you pointed out, the hinge screw has a coin slot on both sides. So you can sit up there with two coins or a screwdriver or something and tighten that up slightly so there's more friction here, and therefore it will not open up as easy. You just tighten it where you have to pull it out rather than it just coming out. Okay. It locks solidly. Now it's got a more aggressive teeth grind for the 210, and this is for working with green wood. Big gap rakers like this is green wood saw. They're going to cut cleanly, but you got to rake out a lot more material. Okay. The blade is longer than the Bahco, and so in sheer cutting size, the Silky wins that hands down because it's got a longer cutting surface. It's also, let me back up here where you can see a little bit more, it's a little bit more of a curve when it's in the flat situation. And that means it wants to wrap around the wood, and instead of it being like a flat edge going up in there, it's kind of wrapping around. You're getting more cutting action on round, and 90% of what we're going to be cutting in the field is going to be round stock, so that gives it a distinct advantage. And it has a 2-position where I can lock it up, and now I've got an angle up, so when I'm cutting something and I got something here and I need ground clearance, so to speak, I'm cutting something down low, because this was a pruning saw. This might be cutting roots. They made it where it would lock up high, and therefore I can get my hands up out of the dirt. That's something that the Bahco can't do. So it's got 2-position lock. The blade on it is thinner than the Bahco's, and it has replacement blade, same as Bahco. And it is a spring steel, but it is thinner. And one of the common concerns I hear about this is that the blades break, especially when you notice it has a hole in it. Now, I'm sure there is somebody out there that's going to tell me exactly what that hole is for. I'm figuring it's for hanging it up or something, or some sort of whatever. But there's a relief hole in the blade, and usually holes mean weakness, you know, as far as flexing. It's thinning it down right there. So flexing, it almost seems when I see pictures of them broke, they're somewhere right in here. So, okay, first cut with the Bahco. Nice clean cut, nice and smooth, good to go. See how long it took. And I jumped out twice, yes, but you get an idea how long that took. Now, with the SILKYSAW. Again, nice clean cut, and that's good, hard, dry wood right there. And it went through it no effort. As far as effort, SILKYSAW was a whole lot less effort, and it felt as if you were just gliding through it. So as you see, they both cut well, very well. Which is easier to cut with? The SILKYSAW. And why? It's because, as I pointed out, the Bahco cuts on both the forward and the backward stripe. So that as you push forward it cuts, as you pull back it cuts. And we're Americans, and for some reason we Americans think you got to push a saw through something. The Japanese figured out that it was better to make a saw a pull device where it cuts on the pull back to you stroke. And that gives a distinct advantage to the Silky because, let's talk about anatomy just a little bit. When you go and pick up something, and I go and I grab this item and I pick it up, and I get right here. The muscles I'm using to pick it up are the forward part of my arm, that bicep. I'm lifting up. This is the up motion, okay? Also through my back, these muscles are designed for me to do this, to pull to me, okay? Pushing away from me is the muscle on the back side, back here. That's the push away, and it's mostly here in my arm. That's the reason whenever you're doing push-ups and you're doing this, you know how hard it is to do a push-up versus grab something and pull it to you? Have you noticed that? It's because of two different musculatures, two different jobs. So with the Bahco, if I'm cutting on a push stroke, and what I'm doing is I'm pushing, coast back, pushing, coast back, pushing, coast back, how most people think to cut. I'm using the back muscles, the push away muscles, which are not my stronger muscles. And your arm gets tired and you fatigue quicker. However, with the SILKYSAW, it's coast, pull, back to me. That's all of these muscles and into your shoulder and your back pulling, so it feels a lot less effort. In many cases, it's almost effortless. You just seem to be pulling your arm back and you're watching chips fly everywhere. So for ease of cutting, I give it to the SILKYSAW because of that, and that's simply because it's a cut on pull saw. So you gently go forward, dig in and pull those shoulder muscles, dig in and pull back toward you. It's like you're grabbing a handful of dirt and digging toward you. That motion right there. And that's what causes the saw to feel like it's cutting easier and smoother because it's using different muscles to do it. Likewise, when you see these saws broke, a lot of times it's where people have bear down and they're trying to make it cut like a two-way. They're bearing down and trying to cut on the back stroke. And that thinner blade flexes when you're trying to force it back through. It won't flex coming back to you because it's simply being pulled. If you push, then it flexes and you're over flexing the blade. So if you'll simply hook and pull to you, coast back. Dig in, coast back. That's the reason. With the Bahco, with that thicker blade, it can take a little bit more horsing around. And if you're doing things where you see where you cut notches and you stick in there and you popped it out, definitely the Bahco is more superior for that type of work because it's going to hold up better for that because that blade is more flexible and the blade is thicker and can handle that kind of abuse and there's no hole in it. So that, if you're doing that type of notching where you're going to use just the saw, cut the notch and take the blade and kind of put pressure and try to pop it out, Bahco. So, which is the better? After having a couple of weeks now with the Silky, and it's springtime and the wife wanting a lot of things trimmed up in the yard, I have done quite a bit of work now with it, 4 or 5 days off now of using it in the field. And I'm gonna be honest, of the two, the Silky. I like my Bahco and I'm not getting rid of it. The longer blade gives a distinct advantage in the cutting length of pull and cut. The weight is negligible between them. If it isn't the same, it's awful close. The only concern I had with the Silky was the fact it wouldn't stay closed in a haversack, and I said that in video. And the first one that I got to, Silky that I got to run in any extensive amount was with Dan Lutz. Dan Lutz has got one of the bigger model, of course. He's 6'7". He's going to get the big boy. And I was impressed at how well we could cut, 6-inch diameter logs with that thing. And that it was not nearly as much effort as I expected it to be. It would have tired me out with a bow saw. And yet here I'm doing it one-handed with a SILKYSAW, and it's no more effort than it would have taken with my bow saw. That impressed me. So I pulled the trigger and got me my own. So Blackie's 2 cents worth is, both are good saws. Both will serve you well. If you had to buy just one, what would I recommend? The SILKYSAW. I like the 210 size. It's about the same size as the Bahco, and in bulk, as in carrying it in pack, if I put one beside the other like that, you can see they're almost realistically the same length, and they're almost realistically the same thickness. But then whenever I open them up and touch tip to tip, you can see I got like a full, from there forward, more cutting room. So that gives the Bahco a disadvantage over the SILKYSAW. So it's going to be the SILKYSAW. So I'm not going to throw this away, of course. This is going to go into the bug out bag and become the saw I carry in there. I was carrying my old Fiskars in there. The Silky will now be riding with me in the haversack or in that configuration as my bushcraft saw. I don't want you to come away from this thinking that I'm bad-mouthing either saw. Both saws are really, really good quality saws, and I'm very impressed with both of them. But it's certain little advantages in the field that I see, and that I got to give the nod to the Silky. Now this isn't new. I'm probably one of the last guys on the bandwagon, because when you look back over the last, I'd say 5 or 6 years, how many people were running Bahcos changed to Silkies? And I thought, okay, it's a trend, or it's somebody is giving away saws to bushcraft guys trying to get, promote something or whatever. And so I didn't jump on that bandwagon. It was not until I had some quality time with one of the saws, not just picking it up and playing with it, but I mean sawing up 6-inch logs, that I became really impressed with how the tooth design, how the blade works, how everything. And that's what really sold me on it. Hands-on experience. The Bahco is going to be in the bug out bag. It will serve well just the way it is. I am not in any way feeling neglected by that. The Silky, for the weight, the size, the action, is great. And there's another little advantage that the Silky has. It's not really an advantage per se, but I like it, and I've been playing with it, and it works real good. Notice how right there that notch is? That's a good 90 degrees. And so I started taking, and I can hook my ferro rod right there on that edge and shave a big molten core off of it and make a big explosion of sparks for making a fire. So that way, that little notch right there can also be used for that. And the back edge of this is also 90. And just the shape of it makes it good for scraping. And I've done a couple of things where I've done scrapings to make up shavings to make a fire with it. I can do that with the Bahco as well, but the Bahco is rounded. I would have to put a 90 degree right there. But the Gumboy comes with not a true 90 degree, but with a sharp enough edge I can do that. Just a little extra. Hope you enjoyed this, guys. Please leave any questions or comments below. And do me a favor and hit that like, share, and subscribe button before you go. Till next time, I'm Blackie, wishing you safe journeys. Have a great day, guys.